One of the things that we've discussed before on Vlad TV with a few people, with Lord Jamar, I think with Judge Joe Brown,
Right.
with John Amos, was how they feel how society tries to feminize black men, especially certain types of black men, to make them more palatable
I hear
to white people
I hear
by putting them in dresses and
it's funny.
else
I
like
hear that argument, and I never got that, because to me that's always just been a comedy thing. That's like comedy 101. That's like one of the oldest tricks of comedy trade is men in drag. I never got that. And I know that's what they say, but I never saw that like that. Martin as Big Mama is hilarious. Eddie Murphy as Mama and Grandmama Klump is hilarious. I never looked at Eddie and went, oh, they're trying to, feminize him and make him come off weak and not like a strong black man. I went, funny as a motherfucker. The grandma, had a chain hanging from the delivery, the voice, the performance. I never got that, man. Flip Wilson as Geraldine. I never got that. I don't see what they see in regards to that. I just see funny shit.
I see what you're saying with it. There's different, points of view. I mean, do you feel that, for example, white America is scared of someone that looks like you?
It's
big,
funny.
Black guy,
right,
intimidating looking, and if you throw a dress on you, they're a little okay, a little more okay with it. Would you wear a dress in a movie?
If the comedy is right, yeah. If the comedy is right, absolutely. I gotta say to white America, bravo. You guys have pulled off the world's greatest Jedi mind trick on society.
Yeah.
Because this notion that black men are to be feared and black men and black people are scary is hilarious to me. Because historically speaking, white people, you guys have been the most dangerous motherfuckers on the planet. You wiped out the Indians. You kidnapped niggas. You oppressed us for 400 years. We get beat by the judicial system. We get beat and killed by the cops. Cam Newton is a thug, but yet you've seen videos of him giving shoes and things away to people in wheelchairs. And he's got a great smile, the most least non-threatening dude ever. When it comes to that stigma, that black people are to be feared, that is the biggest hypocrisy on the planet. Historically, y'all have been the most dangerous motherfuckers on the planet. Black people ain't never hung nobody from trees, ain't never shot nobody with water hoses, ain't never sick dogs on them, ain't never don't screw white people through the judicial system, ain't never raped, murdered, and pillaged. Come on, man.
Do you think that there is a certain fear that when a black man has a child with a white woman, the baby is considered black, is no longer considered white, so there's this kind of inherent fear by certain types of white people of black men having sex with their white women?
I don't care how mixed you are. If you look like a nigga at some point in your life, the police and society will remind you. So, you can be as mixed as you want to be.
Right.
At some point, look, Barack Obama is mixed.
Yep.
But we've seen so many different negative, demeaning, horrible things about him, on social media. Pictures of him with bones in his nose and plates in his lips, and being called a terrorist and, a Muslim and all these things that he isn't. And he's been one of the most disrespected presidents this country has ever seen. And why is that? Not because of the color of his skin?
I mean, no one refers to him as the first mixed president or the first biracial
president.
president.
A lot of people...
And technically, he is only half black. He
Right.
is just as white as he is black.
Well, the black side shows more than the white side.
Okay.
Which is to say that gene might be stronger.
Right, in his particular case. But technically, no matter what it looks like, he is just as white as he is black.
Yes, from a theoretical standpoint.
Well, from a scientifical standpoint.
Well, if you take, which is stronger, white cream or black coffee?
I mean,
And you mix the white with the black, it still is brown.
I understand that, and I think that's because.
Well, I tell you what, if he is just as white as he is black, that's not showing by their treatment of him.
Okay.
They refer to him as Obama and not Mr. President. That's disrespectful.
I'll tell you an interesting example, because I didn't really understand the racism of this country until I started to travel outside the country, because I just assumed that certain things are just inherent in humans, but then once you go to other places, you realize, nah, U.S. has their own little brand of bullshit that they pushed on us. So I remember I was in Brazil one year with a friend of mine who's mixed. He's half Russian, half black. And we were talking to one of the Brazilian girls, and she said, "You're not black, you're Moreno." Like in Brazil, they have a term for people who are biracial. They don't just toss them in with everything that's not chalk white. You see what I'm saying?
So what does that tell you? That tells you that across the world, niggas catch hell. We got our own lane no matter what.
Well,
and in Europe, during soccer matches, there were reports of white dudes throwing bananas on the field.
I've heard of this.
In Australia, they refer to Aborigines as some derogatory term. I forget what the term is, but there's a special term for Aborigines because they are the darker Australians. So niggas been catching hell on this planet no matter where you go. Is it to the degree of the United States? Is it as historical as the United States? No.
Well, because the United States had a history of slavery that most places in the world did not have.
Yes. Yeah.
Just point blank, period.
Yeah. And again, because the United States has been so influential to the rest of the world. Like the United States is like the television that the rest of the world watches and has often gotten their cues from. What's hip, what's trendy, what to do, what not to do, fashion sense, musically. Everybody's taking their cue from us, which is why the power of television and movies is a big deal. Bill Cosby tried to buy NBC. They didn't sell it, not because he couldn't afford it, because they're not going to give him that kind of power. Power, the ability to change people's perceptions and ideas of you based on what they see. There's a lot of people in other parts of the world who don't like niggas, not because they've never met niggas and have a reason not to like them, because they saw in a movie, niggas are dangerous. Niggas are thugs. They see on TV how we're depicted. So that's their perception of us.
I don't know if I believe the Bill Cosby NBC story. Because at the end of the day, once you start getting to very high economic levels, people aren't really worried about the race when someone got the money. You see what I'm saying?
Money is power, isn't it?
Yeah, money's power. You know, for example, Michael Jackson bought the Beatles catalog, which was like, white people love the Beatles. It's one of the biggest, white musical,
okay, but you
groups of all time.
But you talking about one thing, the Beatles.
Okay.
If you run a television network, you have the power to put on that network whatever you want.
Okay.
Dramas, comedies, specials, variety specials, late night talk shows. And not saying that Bill Cosby would, but if he would have bought NBC and turned it into BET, now and as powerful as BET has been, it ain't NBC. That's a local. I mean, that's a television network that reaches the masses.
Right. BET is also
that's a major cable network.
BET is owned by Viacom, which is white owned as well.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's white owned, but the programming was still black.
Yes.
99.9% of what you saw in there was black.
What did you think about Stacey Dash saying there shouldn't be a BET?
Again, man, Trinidad James, Fetty Wap, and 2 Chainz. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Here's another gem I hear white people say. Well, what if we had WET? What if we had white entertainment television celebrating whiteness? Black people, you guys would be screaming bloody racism. Well, you do. It's called all the other channels.
Right.
Like, that's what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. Like, I don't understand why white people feel, when did we become even? Like they think that black people play the race card just to play it. There's some truth in this. And treat it like the Bill Cosby thing. There's too many of us screaming it for us to be making this up. Like, I love white people. I don't want this to come off like I don't like white folks. I do. But when it comes to race, again, man, y'all can be naive, dismissive, arrogant, and insensitive. Listen to what black people are saying. Really try to understand our plight. And if you have an ounce of humanity in your soul and in your heart, you'll get it. I really believe you'll get it.
Did you see the 2016 Oscar picture?
Yeah.
And it had The Weeknd was the only black person
Right.
in the photo.
Right.
Chris Rock, I guess, didn't show up to the photo.
Right.
And there may have been a few other black people that were nominated that just decided not to show up.
Right.
What's your take on the whole Oscar so white thing?
Business as usual.
Yeah?
Yeah. You know, again, that's why I'm saying it's too many examples and too many of us screaming for us to be making this up. Black Lives Matter, the Cam Newton controversy, Oscar so white. There's always something. There's got to be some validity to this. There's got to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, I interviewed Russell Simmons recently, and he brought up a very interesting point that I'm not aware of because I'm not really in the movie industry. I'm really more on the music side of things. But what he pointed out, which I never knew, was that
the problem is that there's nobody black pushing buttons nowhere. Nowhere, in charge of nothing. Forget the Oscars.
That's interesting because the president.
Think about it.
The president of the Academy is an African American woman.
Yeah, all right. President of the Academy, the producer of the show,
right?
Chris
but not,
Rock,
but not the actual studio heads.
It's a lot. The conversation is who's pressing the buttons. Nobody black. Period. No president, no studio is black. No president, no TV show company is black. No nobody of any significance at all.
So even
in the agency business.
Even at Netflix.
Is black. Nobody.
Wow. That's pretty interesting.
The black agent, Charles King, was the biggest black agent. He was the black agent. And he was the black agent, without dissing him, he knew that they'd reach around him when it came to his big black clients. And he was agents of record, but the boss made the deals, with his big black clients. Nobody black in charge of nothing at no agency.
Do you think that's by accident? That there's not a single one? Do you think that's an accident? This showbiz thing is a fraternity, man. And I, when I first got into it, like anybody, when you first get into anything that you don't know about, there's a certain level of naivete. And I thought you just go to Hollywood and you throw your thing down and voila, the rest is history.
Okay.
Man, this shit is a fraternity, man. It's like high school. Everybody don't get to sit at the cool kids table.
Right.
Sometimes the goth kids got to sit with the goth kids. The nerds sit with the nerds.
Right.
The jocks with the jocks.
Okay.
The preps with the preps. It's when they use that term A-list. So-and-so is not A-list. What a way to categorize who you are. You B-list. You go sit with them. You not worthy. That's some high school shit.
Pretty
That's
much.
some immature high school shit. But it is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. To say that you're A-list.
What does A-list have to do with your talent?
Okay.
You could be C-list and be the most talented motherfucker in the room. Everybody doesn't get the opportunity. That's like, when you talk about baseball, some of the most talented guys to ever play were in the Negro leagues. Mm-hmm. They weren't in major leagues.
Right.
So that would be them being considered, oh, you in the D list, you in the C list. They can't say they didn't have, their talent wasn't just as good as some of the guys in the major leagues. They just weren't given the opportunity because there's such a smug nose in the air, who are you attitude about this shit.
Do you think though in today's day and age with social media and YouTube that you don't really need the opportunities from the gatekeepers anymore. You could do your own thing. I mean, you have, you know, for example, like right now, Vlad TV has over 1 million subscribers. I put out whatever I feel like putting out. There's no one that could green light me. You know, no one told me to interview Aries Spears. This was my own idea. I'm going to put it out. You're going to get over 1 million people going to watch this, guaranteed. Once we put out all the different parts, over 1 million people will watch this. No one's green lighting it. All the revenue goes back to Vlad TV, and we repeat the cycle. And we're not worried about trying to get cosigns, because before I did Vlad TV, I did documentary films and such, and I remember having to work with movie companies and having them have to green light shit and put the money up and that type of bullshit. And I just said, that's not for me. You know, so why are people so worried about getting that cosign, you know, getting that quick check as opposed to actually working for it?
No, I don't think that they're opposed. There's some people that want the flash fame. They don't want to put in the work. But at the end of the day, funny is money, and hard work, all of that matters at the end of the day. You know, I look at some of the guys who become successful from Vine. 6 seconds. Can I be funny in 6 seconds? I'm sure if I really put my effort in. But I've come off of 8 years on Mad TV, a sketch comedy show where, you know, we did major production stuff, you know, wardrobe, music, ensemble cast. So I'm used to that world. So it's hard for me to just sit back and go, okay, quickly do something in 6 seconds. And while there are guys out there who certainly have made a name for themselves, like a King Bach, and hats off because he's a funny dude. I think in terms of longevity, when you take someone out of that and you go, okay, now be funny for 8 minutes. Now be funny for 30 minutes. That presents its own challenge.
Okay.
So being funny in 6 seconds is cool. Putting up whatever you can put up on YouTube to get a little attention is cool. But for the long haul, can you do more than that? And I think sometimes people go, well, with YouTube and Vine and certain outlets, yeah, we don't need the major networks. We don't need the co-signers. We don't need that. You may not, but that's a lot tougher road. I mean, again, that's like comparing the NBA to the CBA. At some point, you want to play for the majors. You want the big leagues. And you know, the studios and the networks, those are the big leagues. Not saying you can't get through the cracks and make it because of a YouTube or a Vine, but it's just much harder. It's much harder.
It's much harder, but once you achieve it, it's so much more satisfying. You know,
Is it?
I mean, as someone who owns their own platform, it really is. Because let me tell you, I worked on 3, you know, quote unquote films. I did 2 documentaries and I did an episode of American Gangster. American Gangster, you know, I had a $250,000 budget. For the episode, I had, you know, so I had all the best equipment and the editors, and, you know, I produced this documentary called Kiss and Tell, which was about Corinne Steffens, $350,000 budget. I can tell you, out of all those films, I have not seen a single royalty check.
Right.
You know, I busted my ass for like 3 to 6 months, working every day, doing everything, and then, you know, years later, it's like I'm being told they haven't recouped yet.
Hey man,
you feel me on this?
My last stand-up special, I've been told that too.
You see what I'm saying?
Which makes I don't want to take you off your point, but it makes no sense to me how these people, you're in the business of making money.
Yeah.
So you guys aren't producing specials just to be doing them. You want a return.
Exactly.
So they give you upfront money, which kind of like back in the day, of the Motown years or the record industry, they buy you a Cadillac in a house.
Right, and it's leased.
That's the illusion.
Right.
You got a Cadillac in a house and you come from poverty, you should be happy. Right. Not knowing that the real worth is not in the car or the house, it's in owning your masters and seeing the money from your sales, getting a huge percentage. So, I've done a stand-up special and I've been told to this day, yeah, we haven't recouped enough to give you anything yet.
Exactly.
And if you try and fight it with lawyers, you'll probably end up spending more money on lawyers than you will find then it'll be worth it to see if you actually have something to recoup.
Exactly. And this is why I own all my own masters. And I have 10,000 videos on my channel, which will keep making money after I'm dead.
But let me ask you, in a perfect world, truthfully, if you could still do everything you're doing now in terms of control, but do it on a Spielberg level, you know, and this means maybe having some co-signers or a major whomever, you'd say no to that?
If I knew that I had ownership and I had real residuals and I wouldn't have to deal with a bunch of fuck shit, you know, I've never been against collaborating with people, but I've noticed that when it's time to collaborate with people that are richer than you, you will almost always take the short end of the stick. That's what I have found.
Right.
So it took roughly 10 years to get to this point.
Right.
But you know, for example, you've seen that Eddie Griffin interview that I did. Howard Stern had it on his show and talked about it for 10 minutes. It was on Fox, it was on NBC, it was on Daily Mail. You know, that was a very important piece of footage that I was responsible for, that I'm gonna own for the rest of my life.
Right.
Whereas if I was working for NBC, I would have gotten a check for that and they would have owned that, you know, forever.
Yeah. I mean, there is a way to get there, and there is a way to achieve both. And of course, that is the biggest challenge of them all. Right. Is trying to get to that place.
Because if you think about it, you know, Spielberg didn't keep working for other people.
Right.
He went and started DreamWorks.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. There's a way to achieve that. But the higher the goal, the bigger the hurdle.
Well, I mean, do you want the fame or do you want the money? For me, I've always wanted the money. I don't really care, you know, and a lot of times it's the trade-off between the fame and the money. We'll make you famous, but you're not going to be rich. Or you're not going to be as rich as we're going to be.
I don't think you'll ever be as rich as they're going to be. But again, I think there's a way to achieve both. You know, Denzel is pretty rich.
Yeah.
And he's pretty famous.
Yeah.
And he's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Will he ever be as rich and as powerful as the studio? No. But he's in a pretty damn good place.
But Denzel has always been fine with just acting in other people's movies. He's never went out and said, I'm going to start my own company and start doing my own movies.
But that's his choice.
That's his choice.
He certainly can do that if he wanted to.
If he wanted to, but this is what I'm saying. Like, I don't think you could really compare the two because he never tried to do that type of thing.
But how many have? I mean,
Oprah.
Okay, Oprah with the TV network.
Yep.
Okay, I don't know enough about that to really speak on that. But I would wonder, like the OWN network, that's almost like buried amongst a million other cable channels. Why isn't that more out in the public? Why isn't that more in your face like her show was on a major network?
I mean, maybe because the content they put out,
but it's Oprah,
may not be as good as it should be.
But it's Oprah. That's the female Jesus.
Look at Netflix. Someone went and started Netflix.
Yeah.
And now Netflix is winning all the Emmys and everything else like that. I mean, if you think about some of the best shows on television, Netflix has to be in that conversation. Orange is the New Black.
Right.
You know, Narcos. Have you seen that? Incredible big budget films. You know, in fact, Netflix, I looked this up, accounts for 35% of all the internet traffic on the planet.
Right.
Including porn. Like if you add up all the porn and all the other shit, all the YouTube, the whatever, Netflix accounts for a third.
Well, listen, I've always wondered why you look at some of the most prominent and successful black entertainers in the industry, whether it's acting, singing, any form of entertainment, sports, and I go, how come Oprah and Michael Jordan and Denzel, and I could name 5 or 6 others, don't all sit down and have this power meeting and go, let's all put in a piece of our money and create our own Warner Brothers, our own TV network? I would love to hear the answer to that question, because certainly with all that money, I would think that would be achievable. But I also think, to some degree, I don't know, and some people might think I'm going too deep here, but or might say it's ridiculous, but I think, again, when you talk about the effects of racism and slavery, there's always been this mentality within the black community of crabs in a barrel. You know, we're not the quickest race to look out for one another. As soon as one of us can get to the top, it's like, all right, made it. See you niggas, good luck. Whereas, you know, it seems like white boys in this business look out for each other all the time. How many movies are we gonna see where Nick Swanson and Rob Schneider are in an Adam Sandler movie?
Right.
He looks out for his boys.
Right.
And I wish more black entertainers would go, hey man, I got this movie I'm doing. I got you. Come with me. Let's do this.
Well,
So I think it'd be nice to know that if we took our resources and our power and our money and our fame, why we can't create that opportunity? Why we can't create that door for ourselves? We seem to be content on making it big, taking what we're given, and calling it a day.
Stunting on everyone who hasn't made it. I'll tell you a very interesting conversation I had a little while back with Rip Hamilton, who has, you know, he played with Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I know.
You know, he has I think 2 rings. He said in the whole time that he was in the NBA, you know, you take a look at the NBA locker room, and you know, based on whatever the rules are in the NBA that year, you're looking at a combined yearly income of like $100 million or so in that locker room, right? If you look at a typical NBA team, you know, you look at, for example, the Lakers. You know, granted, Kobe's making more than everybody, but there's all types of everyone there is a millionaire, probably a multimillionaire.
Right.
He said the whole time he's been in the NBA, he does not remember a single conversation in the locker room about how the fellow players are investing their money or starting new businesses. There's conversations about what kind of car they got, about what girl they're messing with, about what kind of jewelry they got.
Nigga thinking. Yeah.
Or, you know, a house that they got.
Yeah.
But and if you look at, you know, professional sports in general, it could be over in the blink of an eye.
Right.
One bad injury and that's
Right.
it. It's over.
Right.
You know, the money you make, and unless you're lucky enough to become a sportscaster or whatever else,
Right.
you know, once you're out of the league, that money completely stops. It's not like other fields.
Right.
But he said at no point does he remember talks about how people are investing not stocks, not businesses, not anything.
Right.
And that really kind of fucked me up, because it's like I'm always talking to people around me about that.
Right.
Like I'm always thinking about how I could keep this, you know, this money going and reinvesting and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that we culturally have been groomed that way. You know, again, we come from, a lot of us come from poverty, and we've never had anything to begin with. So once you get it, it's like you feel like you've made it. I got it. I've achieved. I ain't got to do nothing else. I got it. I got the house. I got the car. I got the jewelry. I got it. And we don't think beyond getting it. Like, getting it is one thing. Keeping it is something else. And I just don't think we're groomed that way.
Yeah, keeping it is something else, because I've definitely gotten it and lost it, and it took
Right.
a long time to get it back.
Right.
There was an interesting documentary I just saw on Netflix. It was about Dean Kamen. Dean Kamen was the inventor of the Segway. You know, that thing that rides around the 2 wheels. And he's, not only did he invent the Segway, but he invented a whole bunch of other shit. Like, he's worth about $500 million.
Right.
You know, he invented a purified drinking water system where you could literally piss on one side and have pure drinking
Right.
water come out on the other, which he got into all types of poor countries. He invented, like, you know, like the Coca-Cola Freestyle thing that, you know, you could mix up the flavors. He
Right.
invented that for Coca-Cola. And he said something very interesting, which really kind of got me thinking. He said that he would go around talking to kids, and he would ask them, name a famous scientist. He said every so often they might name Albert Einstein, but in general, they can't name any.
Ask them to name an athlete, they can all day
You
long.
ask them, you know, if they know who LeBron is, and 100% of them will
Right.
know. He said, let's just take a step back from this situation. Everything around you is, you know, the reason why people are living to the age that they are, it's because of scientists, because of medicine. You know, like I think about all the times I've gotten sick over the course of my life, and I took some antibiotics and they fixed it up. And if that wasn't around, I'd be dead right now. Electricity, the cell phone, flight, the car, the wheel, physics,
right.
Space travel. It just goes on and on and on. Life support, open heart surgery. But yet, a guy that could put a ball into a hole with a slightly better percentage than his co-workers
right.
is worshipped like a god.
Because that's sexy. It's sexy.
Just
seeing a muscular cut nigga with a six-pack jump in the air and make an arena full of people go ooh and ah, it's sexy. No chick wants to bang the dude that invented the toaster. You know what I'm saying? And we need the toaster.
Right, I like
you
toast.
Need that hot bread with butter on it early in the morning to give
right.
you your carbs and your energy to complete your day.
I mean, think about just the effect of social media. Like, think about, and this is like me and Scarface got into a conversation about this. I say that what's happening right now with the racism, the police brutality, right now, I don't think is any different than it was 10 years ago. I think the only difference is that right now everyone's got a video camera on them and you got social media. So now you get to see it, because before you only had a couple media outlets and they would decide what it is they put up. Now the people decide what they want to see.
I'm for that.
Someone invented that.
And they're gazillionaires.
Someone put that together.
Right.
And yet a guy that could put a ball into a hole who really brings nothing to society. If you
right.
really just take a step back, if you think about like the aliens finding, human civilization
right.
a billion years from now and says, wow, this guy with the ball really was a big deal during this time.
The guy with the ball, when the game is over, his after party at the local nightclub is gonna be jumping. The nigga that invented, some special lights, the cheese and crackers at his house gonna be stale. It just is. I think people are into the obvious. The people that create things that change everyday life and that have an impact on us, and those guys that are worth 10 gazillions or hundreds of gazillions of dollars. Those guys exist in the shadows. It's not obvious.
I mean, the Nobel Prize winners are not celebrated in my world. At all. Do you know any? Who won a Nobel Prize?
Damn one.
See what I'm saying?
Damn one.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's kind of sad.
Yeah.
It's really kind of just on a societal level.
Yeah.
And you have kids. Just think about that. Your kids are growing up
right.
in the era that the athletes completely overshadow the people that are actually improving the world.
The great Patrice O'Neal, who I said is on one of my comedy Mount Rushmore. He put it in perspective, man. It's intoxicating to sit at the Garden on the floor where you could trip the players with your feet and people are yelling out of the crowd, hey, yo, Tracy Morgan, what's up, baby? It's intoxicating. I've done some things on that level, and it fuck you up. You know what I mean? Because the attention, the fact that everybody wants it, it's glamorized. It's a drug, man. It is a drug. Being famous, and I'm not major famous. I'm not Jay-Z level, Kevin Hart level, but I'm known. And there have been things that have happened to me and places I've gone, and I just go, damn, really? Shit. Like it's mind blowing. I was in Tampa, Florida this past weekend, and the guy that ran the restaurant saw me on the local morning news, and I went in that afternoon to get my lunch, expecting to pay for it. He went, dude, on the house. I ate there every night for 3 nights, and I tried to pay every time. He wouldn't let me. There are places out here where I'll go, and people will go, yo, man, big fan, love you, on the house. And that gets intoxicating, man. You know what I mean?
See, I've always been kind of the opposite. I've always stayed behind the camera because I actually like to keep my private life private. I like, if I was in front of the camera all the time, I'd have to walk around with security everywhere. I already have to do it at hip hop events.
Right.
I would have to just basically walk around with it everywhere. And, I could go to a hip hop event and get that thing that you're talking about, have everyone want to take pictures with me, and
right.
everyone in the building knows who I am,
right.
and they give me my props, but then I could turn it off and then
Right.
just go shopping by myself without being bothered. Because
Right.
I don't know, I've always just been more focused on the business
Right.
than the fame part. So, you know, to each his own.
But I wish he'd stop.
I like Meek Mill, man. Like I'm not gonna.
I wish he'd stop. Listen, I liked Meek Mill, but all of this shit is making you look bad, homie.
Saying he used to want to be signed to Rockefeller, but then he turned into Jay.
Oh yeah.
I understand what he's saying, but you got to understand how that could be took.
Yeah, you're taking a shot at Jay-Z.
I mean, you could be taking a light
You're
shot
taking-
at Jay.
you're taking a shot at Jay-Z.
And hip hop be like, nah, bro, you ain't Jay.
Yeah.
You're Drake, which is fine.